And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Ameer Approved. And boy, oh boy, do things move fast in this environment today. Brand news every single day. Stock market is being affected. Crypto is being affected. Everybody's being affected. And I have a good guest for you today who's going to kind of dive in on these topics. Scott, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
Thank you very much for having me, man. I'm doing good. Just in isolation here, like everyone else, trying to make it work.
Yeah, tell me about it, man. Everyone's having cabin fever right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm doing pretty well over here. Luckily, I've got a house with a yard, and we can get outside and run around and stuff. But usually I'm in my office right now if I'm on a live stream or doing a podcast. And I was relegated to a different room because my kid is like doing school classes with her pre-kindergarten playmates on my screen in there. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at these days.
Nice. Well, it's actually pretty good though, to reconnect and spend more time with the kids and the family. And I also think this also shines some light on how people really underestimate or they didn't appreciate the fact of like having your own property, being away from the city, being more self-sufficient. And a lot of people are now valuing that over the fact of like, well, I'm stuck in this fucking condo, and situations like this, I can't even support myself.
I'm pretty psyched that I don't live in New York City or in my condo in Miami. Even though it had a nice view, you wouldn't be able to get out into it. So, I'm pretty happy with my not too distant in the past decision to get into a house and become a real adult. It's been nice, and like you said, I think it's been an amazing experience to reconnect with family, kind of unplug, and honestly, we're having a good time. Like, I think that won't be the case for my 5-year-old when she can't see her friends for a couple months or however long this goes. But in general, I think I'm an eternal optimist. I'm a pretty positive person. And so there's the things I miss and there's the things that I'm getting more of. So it's a nice balance.
Silver lining and everything, which brings me to the topic of, man, the markets have been pretty crazy. And I know you have a lot of experience in there. That's kind of your forte. My question to you is, what have you been seeing? Are you seeing any trends? Do you have any theses? Like, what's your take? What's your pulse on this?
Stocks or Bitcoin or both?
Let's start with Bitcoin, man. I know people here want to hear about Bitcoin, then we can move into stocks.
Yeah. I've bbeen pretty bullish post March 12th on Bitcoin. Then again, to be honest, I was pretty bullish pre-March 12th on Bitcoin. Nobody's perfect. I don't think anyone, there were plenty of people who were appropriately bearish. I don't think anyone saw a 50% drop in a day. And I think, the tail end of that was largely a result of, poor exchanges and just malfunctioning liquidation engines. And, we've all heard the story, so it's not worth relating. But since then, I've been pretty overtly bullish. I've gotten kind of a lot of crap for it, but I've actually, made up for any losses, even to my long-term portfolio, and way more longing Bitcoin since the bottom. That morning on the 13th, I woke up and Bitcoin was 5,900, and I looked down and realized I had filled at 4,000 and had no idea the price had even dropped into the 3,000s. Immediately sold within 3 minutes of waking up for like a 48% profit. And, I've been long twice since then. So I'm generally bullish. I think that everyone's been shorting, which to me was an obvious sign that if I was a market maker is an inappropriate term. If I was a whale or, a compound operator who was ever moving these markets, because let's be real, it's not me or any other retail trader. They're just doing what they want using our orders. So, I thought that the most pain now would be up, and that would be the path of least resistance because there's a lot of shorts to plow through. So we got basically to where I thought we would end up, in the sort of high 6,000s, low 7s. I mean, I believe we could still get to, 8,000 before evaluating, but we're at that point right now where nothing would surprise me. So I think up or down is kind of equal, would be one of those sort of buying into resistance situations. I could definitely see people shorting here, although, my bias is still bullish for Bitcoin.
Do you how much do you think of the Federal Reserve's policies lately with printing unlimited money and the decline of the Dow and the S&P has to do on the Bitcoin price?
So That's kind of a multi-tiered answer. I've always said, and anyone who follows me or, reads my newsletter or whatever, that it's very clear that Bitcoin is a risky asset. And in any major meltdown, you don't expect people to run from a secure asset, or at least even that secure asset's dumping, but they don't generally run to riskier assets. They exit them first. So a drop in Bitcoin in theory is not problematic or unexpected. That said, I don't think, as I said before, I don't think it matters what your average guy who owns some Bitcoin does. If he panic sells, he panic sells. It's not moving the market. So I believe that in a market this manipulated by a few, that they use, news events to basically move with less friction. So it was very easy short. It's easy for them to sell through the order book and get people to start panic selling and move price. But I believe they move them down into their buy orders
they do both ends, right?
Yeah, of course.
They're front running and they're doing the buy orders and sell orders.
Yeah, but let's not forget that even though Bitcoin had its worst day ever, from that bottom, it had its best 12 hours ever. And I think people neglect that. It can't be a bottom. It doesn't look like a bottom. Well, historically high volume on a 12-hour candle that bounces 50% in 12 hours is the biggest bullish movement that Bitcoin has ever seen in history. So everybody's focused on the negative, thinking you have to keep going down and not realizing that whoever pushed the orders down there had a whole lot of buy orders to fill once they got those the final weak hands and sellers shaken out at that point. At least that's my perception. So I think the markets are correlated in as much as, yes, it's a risky asset, and yes, whales will use other markets to push the price. But honestly, I think the direct correlation to me is somewhat dubious. It's not something I trade on. I still think that Bitcoin kind of exists in its own world. We can look at a chart and trade it regardless of global events to some degree. And, whether I'm right or wrong, it's been profitable for me. And, as a trader, that's all you really, really care about. So, yeah.
And what do you think the psychological limit is right now for Bitcoin?
You mean as far as like levels?
Yeah.
I mean, approaching 7,000 is going to naturally be, round numbers are always major psychological levels, I think. On a monthly chart, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I know that historically, and ironically because of the number, but 7777 has been an extremely key level. That area has been resistance and support on the monthly chart. And right now, really, I think that to keep the bullish case going, we want to stay above 6K. 58.73 is a key level on the daily for me, but anything from there to, a lot of converging EMAs and things just above 6,000, there was an ascending triangle that broke up right around that level. So I would just like to see price stay above that level, and even more so above 64, 65 here. And I can't even tell you, they could be below it as we speak. I don't know what's happened in the last hour, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious levels. A Bitcoin chart is not a difficult thing to read, in my opinion. Whether it follows it or not is up to interpretation.
I'm actually more interested with institutional investors, or let's call them investors in general, who are looking for some type of asset, whether it's uncorrelated to the S&P, specifically now where we're seeing price discovery is very difficult. Liquidity is being rushed in. Since 2008, everything's been stock buyback. So these are all inflated paper value of stocks.
Yeah.
They have no asset. Their EBITDA is nothing. And so I'm interested. Do you think, correct me if I'm wrong for this thesis, but do you see it that some of these investors might be like, fuck it, I'm just going to hedge 1%, 2% into Bitcoin?
I think they should. I don't know that they will. They may already be. I don't really know, but I personally, yes, I'm a big fan of have a small percentage of your net worth in Bitcoin in case the world completely melts down and just like Mad Max. And, I need to trade some Bitcoin for fuel in Gastown or whatever.
Toilet paper.
Yeah, apparently for toilet paper, which is actually the more valuable than any reserve asset at this point.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that they should, and I think that they may, and I would have actually almost not because I want to see pain, but it would have been interesting to see the market continue further down today again, so that we could have finally, gotten rid of the at least day-to-day correlation view that people have of the Bitcoin chart. But it's funny, everyone says it's correlated, but some days it's Bitcoin leading and some days it's the Dow leading. And I can tell you that stocks are not following Bitcoin. And that's certainly what it would have appeared like on a chart over the past, 24 hours or 2 days even. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of institutional investors who are here or involved. I mean, you hear Democrats in Congress proposing a digital currency that doesn't just come out of thin air. Like, oh, I've heard about this thing called Bitcoin. Maybe we can make one. They're in and they're around and they're at least intellectually interested and doing their diligence, I think. So, I mean, I personally think that institutions are largely here. And I think that they've been here since last time it was 3,000, not just this time when it was 3,000, but I think that, we saw a lot of institutional buying on the run from, the low 3,000s up to 14,000. Backed coming online and all those things.
And so we have the halving coming up in May, give or take, right? Sometime in May.
Yeah, I mean, in the next 5-6 weeks.
What's your take on that?
Don't really have one. I'm just not a narrative guy. When it comes to Bitcoin, I think you just look at a chart and
look at the charts, day-to-day charts. Yeah.
I mean, I think that from what I've read, and I'm not really a tech guy or anything like that, but there's a discernible difference between miners that are using the old rigs and the new rigs, and I think that likely, depending on how much price increases or decreases, a lot of the ones who are using the less efficient mining rigs are likely to bow out at the halving or before, or just not be profitable. But I think that, at these current levels, we're back to levels where miners are theoretically profitable, and there's a chance that the halving could still remain a bullish event. But I mean, yes, deflation is great, especially in this inflationary environment in general. But I think the idea of the halving has just been beaten into everyone's heads for months and months and months. So I can't imagine that it's not largely priced in.
That's what I've been saying since the beginning.
I don't think it flicked some switch that day and all of a sudden everybody wants Bitcoin. I just
exactly. Yeah.
Rationally, I don't see, unless the halving, I think, is one of those things that Bitcoin nerds like us, crypto guys, are super into and think it's cool. But then when you step outside of this very, very small community and microcosm, that there's the 99.99% of the rest of the world that doesn't even know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the people we need for Bitcoin to really, truly go bullish again, like 2017. So, I think it's an in it for the tech maximalist kind of thing and not really on a grander scale, particularly meaningful.
I'm hearing a lot of chatter too, like with the hardcore Bitcoin maximalists, like 100K a Bitcoin in the next 2 years. I'm like,
I mean, hey, I'll be really happy if it does, but, I'm not planning on it. So,
yeah. So let's switch gears. What are you seeing in the S&P and the Dow indexes these days?
An opportunity to
shorting. Yeah.
No matter what. Yeah. I mean, so the Fed is obviously going to pump liquidity, print endlessly, QE to infinity, all the sort of memes that we've heard. And none of that's going to fight the coronavirus. And I've been saying this since anyone who's been following me knows I've been shorting since the second day that this went bad. You know what I mean? I'm short almost the top. I closed most of my shorts last week, luckily, because things have irrationally bounced today. I mean, cruise lines are up 30% today, as if anyone's going on a cruise more than they were yesterday. Airlines up 35.
You're more or less shorting companies or industries in particular?
Companies. I had closed them all. So, I mean, maybe before 4:00 today, in the next 2 hours, I'll jump back in and short the end of this bounce. And I could be wrong, but we haven't had 2 consecutive green days on the market since this started. So every single green day has been an epic short opportunity for the next 2 to 3 days. And, you ride it till the wheels fall off. So just keep doing it until it doesn't work. But I mean, to me, it's a layup to at least try to short things like airlines and cruise companies that bounce 35% today in a day. Oil, I'm interested in shorting, but I'm also cautious that if Saudi Arabia and Russia decide one day to make an announcement, I think every oil stock doubles in an hour. So you're playing with fire with oil with it this depressed. I think, if they don't come to an agreement, it's still a great short, but the minute they make that announcement, oil, price per barrel doubles, and there you are. So, but I think that markets, at least common sense, no charts, whatever, why would they bounce?
Yeah.
I mean, QE, all that is great, but we're in a rare sort of unique situation where I don't think we have a damaged supply chain. So there's a lack of supply, but there's also a lack of demand, which is a rare thing because people are inside, they can't go out. Unemployment numbers are going to be astounding. I mean, I already know 20 people myself with good jobs who have lost them, and it's in the first week. So yeah, of course, Trump now is literally on a town hall today saying that he's going to open the economy up back by Easter, so that everybody can die and then they won't be able to shop either. So, there's no way to bring any long-term demand into the market, in my opinion, until this virus is gone, or at least the risk is somewhat mitigated.
Yeah. Have you seen the Vanguard stock today? Fucking crashed.
Did it? I didn't even look.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the real estate market, man. I'm really interested in that. Fucking old bubble needs to pop again.
Yeah, I mean, so I refinanced.
Of course, free money. Let's see, 1%. Sure, give it to me.
Yeah, I mean, I locked it at 2.5% on the lowest day. I kind of bottom ticket, although I think it could still go lower, but who cares? But not so like. I just built a house, so I'm not going to sell it. But if I was a single guy and I sold the top of the bubble in Miami, I bought the bottom of the bubble in Miami and sold the top on a condo, which was the greatest investment of my entire life.
Nice.
Doubled in 2 years. But I can't do that now with kids. Like, there's nowhere I'm going to go rent. There's nowhere to move. But like, if I was moving and I viewed it as an investment, I would try to sell my house here and buy back in 3 or 4 years, for half the price. Because I do think that things are headed that way. I mean, I've been crying kind of depression for weeks when people said we weren't even going recession.
Canadian numbers came out. I'm in Toronto, and we're a small population. California has more than our whole country.
Yeah.
And to give you things in perspective, like this week alone, we have like almost 1 million Canadians applying for unemployment insurance.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, everyone. Who's going to have a job?
Nobody.
Unless you do what we do. Unless you do what we do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but, So, yeah, helicopter money's incoming, but who knows if it'll be enough, and who knows where the dollar will be. But, like, to speak to that, though, the Bitcoin sort of maximalist case that the dollar's going to die and inflationary, and Bitcoin will replace it because it's a deflationary asset. There's nothing I want more right now than dollars.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, short-term dollars
maybe
are the
on the
best.
road, but everybody in the world needs dollars now.
Yeah.
Everyone. It's
Everybody.
the most in-demand asset that there is. So yes, you can theoretically, root against the dollar and inflation.
I think this is what's going to happen in the States. So short-term, the US dollar is the most valuable commodity right now, hands down. Midterm, I don't know. Long-term, it's actually going to get a little bit more complicated. It's not a black and white answer. As inflation is going to happen, the US currency is going to fall apart, because people forget it's not just about the currency. People forget there's something called the United States Army in the military. Like, it's not that black and white. But what I think is going to happen is we're going to have two types of almost very similar to Chinese social credit system, where you can have people in the United States, or maybe even Canada too, where they will get a digital version, which is UBI. Yeah. And it's going to come with a lot of stipulations and a lot of conditions. And it's like, this is the house's money. You can only do X, Y, and Z with the house's money. And then cash, if there is any cash, whether it's USD, that's going to be a premium. That's a whole different economy.
Yeah, I don't think that's an unreasonable assertion. Funny, because the corporations will probably mostly get money without stipulations again, like they did in 2008.
0% loans, bro.
Yeah, never has to pay loans. Use that money to buy some more of your own stock. Don't keep a cash reserve. I mean, airlines spent 96% of their cash on buybacks and now need taxpayer money to bail themselves out because they don't have cash. So their stock is right where it is, proper value.
Yeah,
and honestly.
I also had a guest on the other day. We're talking about Musk and Bezos are even asking for bailouts for some of their, or not even bailouts, like handouts for some of their companies.
Not surprised.
I'm like, what the fuck?
Hey man, free money.
Yeah, and the small business
Get
gets
it while
nothing.
it's
Where the
still
fuck's
worth
our
something.
where's our 0%? You and I need to make like a charter, like a bank charter on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, we're a bank. Just give us 0% fucking loans.
Like Dumb and Dumber IOUs. We fill up the suitcase and
Yeah.
these are as good as money. Buy a Ferrari with the Lambo with that. Whatever.
Oh fuck, man.
But
So
yeah,
what would you recommend them for, like, regular people, like people out there that might still have a job, or they're getting by? Like, any advice for them?
I mean, I think a few things have become pretty abundantly obvious, which is it's key to have multiple streams of income if you can. It's just not a world anymore where you can depend on a single job and be paycheck to paycheck. And I know that's the reality for most people, and they can't do that. But if you can, even if it's selling a few things on eBay or filling out surveys or whatever it is, to have some sort of backup income to fall back on to sort of like soften the landing when things go bad. Because if it wasn't this pandemic, it would be something else at some time in our lifetime.
Yes.
In 2008, we didn't need a coronavirus for everybody to go broke.
Man, we're lucky. We didn't have fucking no world wars, man. Think about people who went to World War I, World War II, civil wars, man.
Tweeting about that yesterday is that, the greatest generation, like we sent off an entire generation of, late teenagers and early 20s to die for their country. And we can't even get kids to get the fuck off the beach and sit at home for 2 weeks and play Nintendo Switch.
Because we created a helicopter generation.
Yeah. But so, I mean, it is what it is. That they don't care about anyone. So, and like you said, it's not their fault necessarily, but, so I would say otherwise, if you have a, investment strategy, I don't think that it should change now. As much as I'm shorting everything, it's a hedge against my longer term holdings that I largely haven't touched. And, I have auto buys for retirement on Amazon and SPY every month. I never look at a chart, and I'm certainly not going to stop buying those dips here. You know what I mean? I'm averaged into SPY like $140. I'm still way up. It's not, it sucks not being at the top. But, I think there's a psychological phenomenon among people, especially traders and investors, that you always compare your portfolio value to the dead top of what. You never like,
of course,
wow,
the top.
I was up 90%, now I'm only up 60%. You're like, I'm down 30%, which isn't the math. But you know what I mean? You're not like, I'm up 60%. It's just, it's not the way that people think. But people who have acquired wealth over time are the ones who can sustain that pain and keep buying on the way down. Now, I'm not like actively trying to buy stocks. I'll let my machine do what it's doing, but I'm still largely in cash and waiting to feel a little bit better about the market. I did exit a lot, everything that I was trading with and a portion of my investments, just because they were in such profit, I sold, 3 weeks ago. But I'm not even interested yet in buying back again.
I had Mark Faber on here a couple of days ago, and that's all he just has cash. He's like, I don't touch, just pure cash.
Yeah. I'm mostly in cash, but I know I'm a pretty decent trader, but emotionally, if I did sell everything at the bottom, like everything, if I really like liquidated everything I've saved my whole life and then price went up, I would not probably deal with that well, and nobody would. So I think that takes balls of steel, a lot of conviction. And also it's just sort of an irresponsible approach in my mind from how I learned to investing. Now, if you had scaled out to cash the whole way up, like, it was obvious that the market was going to dip one way or another. So selling on the way up was always taking profit. It was a good idea. If that got you to cash, I can totally see that scenario.
Cool. Scott, I want to thank you for sharing your insight and thoughts. I know you have a newsletter and the podcast. What's the best way people can get a hold of you with this newsletter and the podcast?
Awesome. Well, I'm at Scott Melker on Twitter, SCOTTMELKER. And in my bio, there's a link to both the newsletter, which has a free version, and the podcast, which has been really awesome doing that with Blockworks Group. They do Pomp and Charlie Shrem and Luke Martin, kind of all the doxed guys like us who have our names and faces. And so that's been a really awesome project to be a part of, and have a lot of fun doing that. So those are the best places to find me. Just find me on Twitter, and everything else is linked there.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man.
Cheers.